My name is Chris Poulos, and I'm really happy to be here. I've seen some of the robotics faces up at the Capitol earlier this month, which was great. You guys came into the chamber. And I'm really a big fan. They mentioned that what my priorities in the town council and just my priorities in general as a parent, I'm a teacher. I teach in Reading, Connecticut, are to really create opportunities for kids, make sure you have good academics, and that your extracurricular activities, such as this one, robotics, is able to thrive in our town. And so you guys are great representatives of our community, and you're known throughout the state. My students will say, we saw the Southington robotics at a competition. And so I'm proud to know you guys. What I thought I'd do, some of you came up to the Capitol, and I thought for this presentation, I would share a little bit about how the state legislature works, what your role could be as a citizen, as a voter in the whole legislative process, and then talk to you a little bit about the importance of voting. What this is not a partisan event. This is a nonpartisan event. So I'm not going to talk about issues. I'm not going to try to tell you who to vote for. If you do have a concern, many of you live in my district, so I'm happy to give you my phone number. You can call me. We could meet at a different time. And as your representative, I'll listen to your concerns and try to do my best to address them. So this is not about issues or politics tonight. This is about the legislative process and how you can engage in that process. So when I was a kid, I saw this Schoolhouse Rock video, How a Bill Becomes a Law, and it kind of simplifies what really happens. Here, there's 9 steps that I have on this little chart here, but it's really a lot more than these 9 steps. From the idea of a proposed bill, that's someone's idea, to it becoming a law, you go through a number of formal processes, but then in between those, there's a lot of shuttle diplomacy, there's a lot of conversation, advocacy, and compromise. Let's just say we wanted to propose a bill to make bananas the state fruit of Southington, okay? When you get elected to the legislature, you could propose anything. That's part of the deal, okay? People elect you to represent them, and you can go to Hartford and say, I want to do this. That's why sometimes on the news you hear these crazy proposals. And the news, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but they make it sound like it's going to become a law, okay? Because anybody can propose anything, and typically the news network will pick up things that sound a little, extreme, and then people get nervous. So hopefully we can work through your thinking on that. But let's just say I wanted to make bananas the fruit of Southington, okay? I would go to the Capitol. I'd fill out an online form saying, an act making bananas the Southington fruit. And I'd say, we want to do this because they're healthy, a lot of potassium. And we'd put it in, okay? And it would go to a House clerk. In my case, there's a Senate clerk and a House clerk, but I'm in the House of Representatives. They would number that bill, and then they would make it available, the concept available, to every other legislator. And they'd also send it to, they'd put it on, send it to a committee, okay? So you might have in the chamber seen all the seats and the names. We really didn't start convening in the chamber till late April, okay? From January to March, we were in committee meetings going through all these proposals. And the committee will hold a public hearing, it will discuss it, and they'll decide if they want to send it forward. If they decide they want to send it forward, it goes to the the legislative commissioner's office. Those are a bunch of lawyers. They determine if making bananas the town fruit is constitutional. If it's not constitutional, it gets thrown out. They also, they will write it up in legal terms. Okay, I'm a teacher, right? So I can't write in legal language. There's a special way you do that. So those lawyers do that. And they also write a summary. So if I want to read through a 100-page bill pretty quickly, I could read a 7-page summary that says Section 1 talks about this, Section 2 talks about this, so that I could get through those efficiently and decide where I stand. It also simultaneously goes to the Office of Fiscal Analysis. That tells the legislators how much, if the bill passes, how much it will cost. Okay, because I'm not going to vote on something that's really, really expensive that we can't afford. And so you want to have that information. And they have all kinds of finance people to get that for you. If things are looking good. It gets scheduled to go on the House floor. The Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader determine what goes for discussion on the House floor. There's a big debate. If it passes the House, it goes to the Senate. If it passes the Senate, it goes to the House, wherever it originates. And then it goes to the governor. And if the governor signs it, it becomes a law. And in between that, and we'll talk about two bills at the end of this presentation, there's a lot of conversation, compromise, and negotiation. I'm going to skip that. All right, so what's your role in this process? Okay, so if you're a citizen, right, it's first and foremost, we need to know what your ideas are. Okay, so I have kind of a narrow perspective because I'm a teacher. So I can go on that education committee and I could propose a bunch of things that I think will be good for people in the state of Connecticut because I've spent 23 years in that profession. But a lot of people come to me. Like in the beginning of my term, I met with the police chief, I met with the fire chief, the town manager. I said, what does our town need? And so the police chief will say, we really need this. I wouldn't know unless I went to him. And then I sent out a survey in the mail. I don't know, some people might have gotten it. It says, what do you think should be a law? What information do you have? And so I get that back and I start to formulate the types of things that I'm going to promote. I typically will call in experts. I'll talk to other legislators that work in the different sectors so I could be informed and take your ideas and put them forward as legislation, okay? If you care about it and you want to speak and share your story, you can come to Hartford and speak at a public hearing. I had 2 residents this year from Plantsville that really cared about a bill, and I said, come up. I negotiated a public hearing for them. And then I brought them to the hearing and I made sure they had a chance to speak. You could also do it on Zoom now, which is something that came out of COVID, which makes it a little bit more convenient with people's busy schedules. And you can share if you support or oppose a bill or a proposal. You can also write to a committee chair or email. I have about 200 emails I have to go through tonight just from the last few days of people saying, vote this way or don't vote this way, or I have a question. And so as an engaged citizen, the more you know about issues, the more you'd want to express your position for them. And some you might say, that's not something that I'm super concerned about. I'm not going to say anything. Others, you might have a stronger opinion. I'll pause right now to see if there's any questions, if anyone has a question about this process. Pretty straightforward. Okay. When it's in a committee, for me, the committee process is the most interesting because we get the bill is sent to committee and we decide whether we're going to draft it, send it away to the speaker for consideration. In committees, we listen. We hold public hearings. We listen to what people have to say. Sometimes they take a bunch of related concepts and they put them into a singular bill. That can happen in committee. Sometimes we'll say, well, this doesn't belong in the K-12 education committee. It's more higher ed, and we send it to the different committee because that's the committee that should deal with it. If we don't want to make bananas the fruit, the committee might just say, we're not going to do anything with this, and it dies. Or they can take a good concept and raise it into a committee bill that's a little bit stronger. Okay, we talked a little bit about the public hearings. These go late into the night. So we'd have a public hearing that started at 11 and I'd come home at 1 o'clock in the morning. You allow everyone who comes to that public hearing to speak. People have 3 minutes. And usually, sometimes there's busloads of advocates that come up and they go one after another to share their opinion. And then after hearing all that information, then we have a committee discussion and decide if we want to move it forward. Okay. Sometimes if it's a bill that has a fiscal consideration, a monetary consideration, we have to send that to appropriations, which is the committee that determines how much money we're going to spend and if the state can afford it. Okay. If we make it to the floor, we debate the bills. Often amendments are proposed. So even though the committee said we want this to be like this, in that process, in between those 2 stops on that first sheet that I showed you, people will say we need to amend this or change it to make it something that is going to be satisfactory for both the House and the Senate. The yes vote will send the bill to the other House. This is the government you probably know. And then if the other House says yes, it goes to the governor. If the other house says, nope, we want to make some changes, then it has to go back, and the originating house has to vote on that amendment. We're in a conversation on paid sick leave right now for businesses, and there's a big debate about how many employees have to are going to be obligated to pay the sick leave. So some people think it should be 50 employees, and businesses smaller than 50 don't have to. Some people think all businesses should have to give their employees. So there's a big debate between the House and Senate. Okay, and as you can imagine, the governor gets to decide. Once the bill goes to him, he could sign it, he could veto it, or he could take no action. If he takes no action over a certain amount of time, the bill will become a law. So typically he'll sign or veto it. If the bill is vetoed, it goes back to the houses. The houses can override a veto with a 2/3 vote, and then it will become a law if both the Senate and the House say to the governor, sorry, we want this to be a law. And there's those timelines. So, a tale of two bills. These are two bills I worked on this session. Okay, so the police chief came to me and said, look, sometimes we have a situation in town where we need mutual aid. We need to call police officers from Plainville or from Cheshire to help us. Problem is, when they come here to help us, they don't have arrest powers. So it's really limiting. And he said, I'd like you to introduce a bill so I can have the ability to have these visiting police officers helping us in a crisis be able to arrest if they need to. So that bill I wrote up, I sent it in, it went to the Public Safety Committee. The Public Safety Committee liked it. They actually strengthened it, made it a committee bill. It came to the House floor, it passed out of the House. It's expected to pass the Senate. I think it will become a law. That's a good story right there, okay? That's a really easy story, right? Now, the act adding non-voting teacher members to the State Board of Education. So in Southington, we have a Board of Ed. There's a couple of students that go on that State Board of Ed. They get elected, and then they go and they kind of share what's going on at the high school. In the State Board of Education, they have two students that are appointed by the governor that sit on the State Board of Education, have a similar role. And so my idea as an educator was we need to put two teachers as well. So the students talk about, they're the consumers of public education. Let's put two teachers on that board to talk about, what it's like to produce that public education. It got a lot of enthusiasm. People liked it. I was really excited. Like, here's my idea. It's something that I've always thought about. It went to the committee, went through the committee process. The bill standalone didn't make it, but the chair was like, I'm putting it in this other bill. So then he had a big education bill, and it was one of 16 things that was in that bill. It was coming up for a vote, and there was an amendment. And they amended it to one student and one parent. So I was a little soured by that, but I said, hey, it's okay. We're going to have, one teacher and one parent. At least we'll get one teacher on there. Okay? I'm going to live with that. That's part of compromise. But it never got to we ran out of time that day. So they said, we're going to talk about this bill on Tuesday. Over the weekend, I'm texting the chair. Is the bill still intact? Yes. Any chance of getting that second teacher back on there? I'll try. I go in to the House on a Tuesday. There's a new amendment, and it's gone. Just wiped out. So 5 months of work. And so I'm frustrated. So I go to the chair, right? And I've got to be professional, but I'm like, what up? And he said, Chris, the commissioner didn't want it. Commissioner of Education, she shut it down. I says, okay. So I call the commissioner. And I say, Commissioner, I heard you didn't like this idea. I want a little bit of, feedback why I didn't like the idea. And so she said, well, you got to go through, maybe we go through the regular appointment process of the governor. Maybe we get a voting teacher. I would entertain that. And so it's still not dead. I go to the chair. I say, if I give you the name of a teacher who's qualified, will you put that forward to the governor? He says, bring her in. Today, she was up at the Capitol. She met with the governor's people. She met with the chair of the Education Committee. The conversation was conceptual, yeah, maybe we'll do this, we'll see. But, you still have to fight, right? Because I think that's what's right. So, and this is what teachers are telling me, that they want a voice. So we fight. So if the original bill dies, we go to another. And if this proposal dies, we go to the next legislative session. A lot of laws pass after 2 and 3 legislative sessions. They die, they don't make it, and there's all kinds of negotiation and compromise to try to bring them back alive. So two bills, 2 great ideas, I think. One, nice flow. The other one, not so much. So what's your role as a voter? Okay, so if you're going to be 18 by November, you want to register to vote. Okay, and I think there was a registration drive up at the high school, but you want to get yourself registered to vote. You need to learn as much as you can about issues. All right, so if there are issues that are important to you, that you care about, you want to learn as much as you can. Ask people, talk to experts. You want to learn as much as you can about candidates, okay? So candidates are going to always try to share their platforms, especially during election time. They might drop literature at your house. They might knock on your door. They might, you might see them at a forum. You should attend debates and forums. Ask them tough questions, hold them to their answers, and review their past voting records. Okay, if someone says, I'm not going to raise taxes, but in their previous elected position, just raise taxes every vote, that tells you something about that person and their, how they act. The next bullet, turn off the TV and log off of social media, okay? Really, like, you want to get accurate information, and like, I watch TV for fun, and sometimes, you know, I watch different channels and try to like predict the slant, but there is bias on a lot of on different TV channels and social media. You want to make sure you're getting straightforward, accurate information, and so don't count on that. And then you support the candidate after you kind of go through that process. You support the person who you think is the best fit for you. And my last item here, don't complain, okay? If you can complain, it might feel good, just go out and vote. Vote for what you want, but complaining isn't gonna make things better for you. Okay. Your vote matters. I have a little video here, all right? Now, this is not a political video, and I know it's on one of those networks I told you not to watch, but this is a little segment about my recent win, which most of you might know. I won by a vote. Okay, so 10,600 people voted, and I won by a vote. So they called me up and they said, would you tell us your story? So I just want to show you, and you can hear a little bit about that. And a lot of people in here were the one vote, by the way, for me.
Chris Poulos, so you start off knocking on doors. What went through your head before that first walk up to a door to knock on that door?
Well, you know, just to start, we knew this campaign was going to be an uphill climb. Southington, where we live, is a pretty Republican area. And our approach was to get out and get as much voter contact as possible. So I was excited. I previously served on the town council, and I had some experience knocking doors. And, you know, it's tough to motivate to get out of your house to get to that first door. But once you get out there and you start knocking, you get into a rhythm. And it's just inspiring to talk to people and to hear their stories, to hear what keeps them up at night, and to talk to them about what their hopes are for the future. And so once started, we just kept going. It was great.
And as a high school teacher, you must have been knocking on a lot of doors where you knew the people who opened those doors.
Yeah, I did know a lot of people knocking the doors, and I actually teach in a different district than where I ran for office. But having served previously on the town council in town, a lot of people remembered me from past elections. And we talked all about our town. I grew up here. We talked about the way things used to be, the way things are, and the way things we hope be envisioned for the future.
Senator Murphy, so you knocked on those doors some years ago. What was it like for you watching this campaign develop? And I'm sure you had an eye on it when those returns were coming in and looking at an area where you always had to win those votes too. Did it feel to you like this was going to be this close?
Well, I had hoped it would be this close. There's two differences between the race that I ran 2 decades ago and the race that Chris ran. One, when I ran, this town was a little bit more Democratic leaning. Today, as he mentioned, it voted for Donald Trump in the last presidential election. But second, I didn't know anybody in Southington because I had just moved there a couple of years previous. And so I was truly introducing myself to everybody that I met. But when I met Chris, I saw the fire in his eyes. This is not an easy thing for him to do. He's got 2 kids the same age as my kids. As he mentioned, he teaches in a district the opposite direction from Hartford. And so this is a big sacrifice to decide to run for office. It's a part-time job in Connecticut. You have to hold down another job. But he was so committed to the future of Southington and the future of the state that he made this enormous commitment to go out and knock on 5,300 doors. And when you meet him, you realize why he did so well, because he's willing to work with anybody. He just cares about people. And you saw he got a lot of crossover votes from Republicans. It shows how, candidates' hard work really still can't be beat. It's the irreplaceable factor in American politics.
Okay, Senator, what advice do you have for the man who'll be taking this position that you used to hold?
Well, I hope he's going to keep knocking doors because, the one thing you need to do is stay totally connected to the people that you represent. And so, I never stopped knocking doors, even when it wasn't election season. And I think he's going to show up at the state capitol with a better sense of what Southington cares about because he talked to 5,300 people. And I think you just stay at it. That way you never get disconnected from what people care about.
Chris Poulos, I'm concerned about Connecticut losing a Teacher of the Year to go into state government. What happens to your students?
Well, when I was encouraged to seek the nomination, before I did so, I sat down first with my family, but then with my principal and my superintendent. And we talked about the prospect of being elected. And they said, we're going to make it work. For me, it's important that in some capacity, I continue to teach. I think that gives me credibility. When I talk about children and families, I could speak firsthand from that position as a parent and also as a teacher. And so we're working on a plan that will allow me to stay in the classroom when the legislature is out of session and when the legislature is in session, how I can still have a presence at my school on the days that I have a lighter load up there in Hartford.
So I guess my main takeaway or my most important role, I think, as a legislator is to get out and to hear from residents. That's part of the reason why I'm here tonight. I want we're going to turn over to some questions now. I'd love to hear from you, any questions about what I shared, or if there's ideas you have for me, parents included. I'd love to take those in. And I think that's really the key of good government is legislators that are in touch with the residents that they represent. And so we'll go to questions. Anyone have a question about the legislative process, your role, voter registration? Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
A lot of these kids here are seniors, and they're going off to college, and some of them going out of state, and they might like to know what the process is, or how they should, approach voting if they're going off in their first years in college.
Sure. So I would think that most people who go off to college are going to maintain their residency in Southington with their parents, unless they move and change their residency. Then you'd go register wherever you move and live. But for those people who are going to come home, clearly register, and then you can arrange as a college student for an absentee ballot that will be mailed to you at your college. You fill it out, you seal it up, and there's a procedure for that. There's two envelopes, an inner envelope that you have to sign, and then an external envelope, and you mail that in. And I'll just say this to all you absentee voters. On election night, polls closed at 8. At 8:45, I was down by 310 votes. And they went and they opened up the envelopes, and I was up by 6 from the absentee voters. So those ballots counted for me. I wouldn't have won if it wasn't for those absentee ballots. Any other questions? So yeah, do that. Do that. Are there any laws or things that you hear about that don't sit well with you? This is your chance. This is your chance. As a teacher, I was really trying to get rid of those mental health days. They drive me nuts. I have a test, and I get an MHD on my attendance list. Mental health day. No, just kidding. We kept those in.
Are those in permanent?
They're in statute now. The statute would have to be amended for those to go away. Yep.
Do they have those for staff? Or just for...
No, they don't have them for staff. Not for staff. We have some handouts. We'll pass those out. Maybe Ethan, if you want to help, and Max. And then, again, I'm happy to answer some questions. You have the ability to make change in the legislative process. You really do. And I'm telling you, there are conversations that occur with a single individual that are a great idea, that are brought forward, and they turn into a law. So if you have an idea or a concern, you should tell your parents, go online, Google, email your legislator. I reply to every single legislator, every single resident who's in my district. It might take me a week, but I always reply. I get back and tell them the good news, the bad news, or the ugly news. Sometimes things can't change, but we work to help you out. Any other questions? Oh, thanks. Yeah. In this packet here, there's a League of Women Voters piece. They're a nonpartisan organization on voting, and there's a registration card from the Secretary of State. You could fill that out and take it to the town hall. That's where you can also request an absentee ballot if you're going to be in college. There's a little card in here if you want to check out my website or follow, I'll post pictures of this event probably. And you can check that out on either Facebook or my website. Yeah, what do you got?
So there's a robotics team in Tennessee, I think it was, that was trying to get robotics to count as a credit given how much time students have put into it. Can they say that could happen in Connecticut?
Absolutely. We just voted on a bill yesterday that made a personal finance credit a requirement. So, a lot of people came and said, hey, there's a lot of people have debt in the world. They go to college, they get in a bad credit card situation, they get into a house that's too expensive, they can't make the payments. This is an issue for the young people. Everyone should learn how to balance a paycheck, calculate compounding interest, figure out what would happen if you charged up a lot of stuff on a credit card. What does it take to buy a house? How do you fill out your taxes? So they created a requirement to graduate personal finance class. And that happened in this legislative session. We just voted it. Now the Senate's got to vote on it. The governor's got to sign it. It's not controversial. People aren't picketing to stop that class. So I would suspect it's going to go through those channels and become a law.
And it goes through when would it become official, what school year?
I think it would be freshmen starting high school next year would have to get that for graduation. So they're not going to put it on the last minute. You got to get it. So, and they did how many people do a capstone project at the high school? You guys do capstone? Yeah. So they said because the schools came and said we can't fit more requirements. So in exchange for personal finance, capstone will now be an option. If the bill passes, capstone becomes an option.
Will that apply to people who will be seniors next year?
I think that it's for the freshman class and beyond. So you got to do it. You're not out. So everyone here, unless you're in 8th grade, yeah. So, but that's a great question. And robotics, I'll tell you that there's and I'm happy to provide this gentleman's name. He came to a public hearing. he's Mr. Robotics, and he's putting one of these, what do you call this, a field? One of these, a giant one of these at Tunxus Community College. It's just his vision, with all different kinds of storage facilities for people to use, for robotics teams to collaborate. It went through the Commerce Committee. He made the case that robotics is a vehicle to produce people, to fill manufacturing jobs. It unanimously passed the House, the robotics bill. So that's going to the Senate. Again, not controversial. We have a workforce shortage in Connecticut. There's not enough workers in Connecticut right now. So people are looking for ways to get great talent into these fields and give them places to learn and grow and opportunities. The folks that came up to the manufacturing fair, again, trying to pair students with local manufacturing companies. Who knows if an internship opportunity comes available for you out of those interactions, or just having that opportunity to learn that day. So people are really working I love when I get stuff like that, because it's like good common sense law that helps people, young people and families. Any other questions? Well, it's been a great honor to be here with you guys, and keep up the good work with robotics. And yeah, my son's in 6th grade now. He's on his way up. So if you'll be here in 2 years, he might be in this same place. So
Christopher, you missed it right before you came. It was announced that the CAAC started a robotics all-state team. And
nice.
3 of our members were nominated and all chosen.
Oh, wow.
For that team.
So, and is that for next year, or?
Our 3 current seniors.
Okay, all state. So, oh wow, that's great.
The banquet at the Aperture.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations to those who got named. That's great. That's the first I've ever heard of that.
It's the first year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's the first year.
Go Southington. How many people are on the all-state team?
I don't know. It's the first year. I don't know.
Okay.
37.
Okay.
They say they were named team of the team of the year.
Oh,
They
yeah.
listed all of the people who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and we were the first,
Yeah.
and so for our only team listed also. as an all-
Congratulations.
First place team.
That's awesome. All right, final question. What are you going to do if you don't like something? Vote. Okay, don't complain. Vote. Okay. Thanks so much.